Hello, Heather. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you so much. I am great. How are you?
Well, I'm really excited to have you on the show today. Guys, listen up. Today we have a fantastic guest. We have Heather Markel, who is an international best-selling author, a full-time traveler, and a travel coach as well. So you are kind of a traveler and you also coach others on traveling. Fantastic. I think one thing, Heather, that all of our listeners have in common is they love travel.
Yep. Yeah, travel's great. And well, specifically, I do full-time travel. So I coach people on how to figure out how to afford and live the full-time travel lifestyle.
I love it. Thanks for coming on the show. I'm really excited to dig into this. And this personally really resonates with me. I spent a lot of time in my 20s kind of being a nomad, spending a year backpacking through South America, living in Japan for a year and a half. And so this really resonates with everyone here on this show today. I love it. First of all, when I saw your bio, Heather, I saw the word nomad, and I'd love to define that word for our listeners to understand, what does that word mean to you, nomad?
Yeah, and actually, I think of nomad and traveling in several different ways, which is important because I think traditionally, one of the reasons it took me so long to quit my job and travel full time was because in my mind, I thought a nomad was a digital nomad and only people in their 20s and 30s do that.
Interesting.
And I'm a bit older, right? So nomad to me for now, like I define that as someone that essentially discovers the meaning they want in their own life through traveling the world and making a home out of wherever they are.
Interesting. I love it. I love it. Why is it that you think, I'm just going to have a more philosophical question to start out, and then we'll go into what our listeners can learn from you. But why is it that you think that travel adds so much meaning, even to conversations that we may have at home when we have them abroad with someone new? There's so much more meaning there. Why do you think that is?
There is, and I think there's multiple levels. I think when we're in our corporate job or our work life, we're not ourselves. But when we're
Yeah.
traveling, we're actually shedding all the layers of who we're supposed to be
Yeah.
and being who we are. And because we're more authentic, I think the conversations we have
Hmm.
are deeper and more authentic as well.
Right. So you're saying we're not hiding anything. We're not being someone else. There's no other agenda. We are just ourselves encountering all this stimuli out in the world that's so new. So we have no choice but to be ourselves. Right.
Exactly. Yep.
I love it. So good. Okay. So I was thinking today we could have you share for us, Heather, three kind of tips or takeaways that our listeners could apply to their life, whether they're crossing cultures or doing business internationally, based on what you've learned from a nomad lifestyle, right? A travel lifestyle. What would be the first thing that our listeners could learn from you and your mindset?
I'd say one thing is that you are the creator of your current experience. This was a really hard lesson I learned my first year of travel when I realized there were many things I didn't like about situations and people I was attracting into my life. And
Hmm.
when I finally hit that wall of, oh my gosh, I am creating this, that stinks. And then I thought, no, 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 that's actually really powerful because it means I can recreate my situation to be what I want. So remember that you're the creator of your own
Okay.
life and your own
Mm-hmm.
work, right? So if there's something in work that you want to go differently, look at what you're doing and do it differently. Uh,
Okay.
a
Uh-huh.
second
Well,
lesson would, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, yeah. I just want to ask you a quick follow-up question on that. That's very rich, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this applies not just to if our listeners decide to go abroad. Honestly, many of them want to move abroad. They're taking the IELTS exam, right, or the TOEFL, and they're getting ready to move their entire families abroad. But even if we're just working in our home countries, we go to work and maybe we have a scenario, a situation that keeps coming up. We're doing something to create that outcome not being the way we want it. Is that what you mean?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. In fact, it was funny because my career that I quit, I felt like it was going nowhere.
Yeah.
And later I reflected, oh, but you know what? I never actually just said to a boss, this is what I want. and how
Interesting.
can I get it? Like, I mean, I did some of that, but I didn't do the, well, this isn't happening. I've been asking for this for X amount of time. I need this to happen. What do we need to do about it? I'm really unhappy.
I see. So ask yourself if you're really saying to the right people what you want. I got it. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. So we're essentially creating all of our circumstances, right? We're not the victim of something else happening from the outside. We're always playing some part in that, right?
Yes, we
Love
are.
it. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a great tip. What would be the second tip for our listeners, Heather?
You have no idea how far, even like, so learning the language of the country that you're living in or working in is, even to learn one phrase goes so far. You have no idea. I mean, I'm lucky I speak 6 languages. And so my first encounter was living with a French host family when I was 16. And, I became fluent. And having those deep, meaningful conversations in another language was so fascinating. I kept going. But when I travel, I don't know. I mean, sorry, when I've gone to Asia and, some of the Scandinavian countries and picking up some of those languages, I just can't. But you know what? I learned, do you speak English? Thank you, please, in their language. And it makes such a profound difference in the relationships you'll have, the business you'll do, and how far you'll converse with these people.
Oh, I love that. That is right in our wheelhouse here at All Ears English. We talk about our core value as a community of connection, not perfection, right? So when we're doing business or when we're just traveling, what can we do to connect? So as a traveler, what's the minimum viable number of phrases you need to learn just to put a smile on that other person's face, right? And have that moment of connection. That's what's going to be the memory that you really want, isn't it, Heather?
It is. And you know what the greatest thing is, if you're like, oh, I can't possibly pronounce that, the best thing is you will make somebody laugh.
That's fun. Yeah, that's
right.
Good.
That's a great icebreaker right there.
That's a great. Yeah, we really have to get out of this perfection mentality. No one expects anyone to be perfect. I love it. Well, tell us now. I'm curious, where have you traveled in the world? I mean, tell us where you've been. I mean, maybe it's easier to say where you haven't been. I'm not sure.
No, well, so in total, I think I've been to 52 or 53 countries, but since I became a full-time traveler in 2018, I've been to 27 countries on 6 continents. I was actually in Ushuaia, met somebody on a boat going out to Antarctica. They said I could go down to the dock, find out if there was space.
Oh, lucky duck. That's crazy.
Right? I didn't do it because something held me back. And let me tell you, I met people a couple weeks later who had just come back from Antarctica, and they would have been sailing the days that I was going to go out. And they said it was 40 hours of swelling seas strapped to the bed. I was like, yeah, I'm really glad I didn't go on that boat.
Do you get seasick on boats?
I
probably anyone would, right?
Yeah, it's like seasick, and I'm just uncomfortable on boats. I learned, so I spent time when I was in Central America, everywhere you go is like on a boat. And at some point I just relaxed and I was okay with it. And I think it happened. I ziplined for the first time.
Oh, I love it.
In Costa Rica, I had no idea what ziplining was until I went. I thought it was the stupidest thing I ever heard of. And then I found myself doing it. And because it was so scary and I could have died, for months afterwards, like all my travel fears, like, being in the airplane, being in the boats, all that stuff, I was like, I'm fine.
So weird. Travel really creates a sense of bravery, a real bravery, right? Because you're upping kind of the level. Yeah, you're doing things. I love it. So good. So learning a little bit of the language to make that connection, that being the goal, right? And then understanding we're creating all of our circumstances. What could be a third tip then, Heather, for our listeners of what they can apply from what you've learned from a life of travel?
So the people of a country are not the same as the government as a country.
That's a good one. Tell us more.
I think we see a lot in the news, and we go, if you're American, you may be familiar with the STEP program, which is something I use for travel safety. It gives you alerts when a random country is, COVID aside, when there might be a demonstration or threats or things like that. So we form judgments and perceptions of countries if we don't go there. Through the news and through something like the STEP program. And I have been time and time again just amazed at how my prejudgments of a country are just totally wrong. And Colombia comes to mind as like one of the big ones where I thought, guns, drugs, like, what am I doing here?
Yes.
And it was full of beautiful people, amazing food, wonderful, everything was just wonderful. So just your prejudices will be challenged and be open to letting them go.
Absolutely. I had a very similar experience in Colombia of my impressions before going in and after coming out of it. It's amazing how, when things go through the news, we get one perspective, right? And we may only read one newspaper from one particular political angle. And then we really do have to travel. And this applies to our listeners too, guys. If you are doing business with someone, maybe you're not traveling abroad, maybe you're in your office in Tokyo and you're doing business with someone from a country where you have certain ideas about that country, put those aside. Right. Put them aside and let yourself connect with the person, even though it's business. I mean, business is about people, right, Heather?
Yeah, absolutely. People first.
People first, 100%. This is great. And just a quick bonus question. Is there anything we could do a whole other episode on this? I feel like, Heather, honestly, but I'm curious because you've traveled so much. Are there any, like, what would you say would be like the common thing you find among all the people, like everywhere, regardless of culture? What is something that kind of goes beyond culture that you find in people as you meet them? Is that a vague question?
Well, it is. And the first thing that came to my mind is that as people, we are genuinely curious about other people. And so at a human level, everywhere I've gone, I have found people to be, compassionate, to be welcoming, to be, curious about who I am in the same way that we need to challenge our perceptions. Yes. I've met other people that have thought, something about Americans, and then we've talked and I've challenged their perceptions of Americans and of judging an entire country based on one or two experiences they've had.
Yes, I love it. That is such a good answer. And that gives our listeners so much to work with as they're either crossing cultures, traveling, or doing business. The common thread is everyone is curious about everyone else. We are all curious, and we that's where we can start. And that's how we open to success, to connecting, to having a better life across cultures. So good. So good, Heather. I love it. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, and let's have you let our listeners know if they want to hear more from you, where could they find you online? Where should they go?
Sure. Thank you. So the best thing you can do is go to my website, which is heatherbegins.com. I chose that name because I feel like my life really started when I quit my job to travel full time. So it's heatherbegins.com. And you might be interested. I just co-authored a book called Voices of the 21st Century. So there's a link to that on my website if you wanted to learn more about the choices that I've made. And all my contact information is there, and I'm happy to hear from you. And I even have a Facebook group called Full-Time Travelers and Nomads with over 3,000 people that either want to travel full-time or are already doing it if you want to come join us.
Fantastic. This is great. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Heather. I really enjoyed this. And now I'm inspired to go and book my next international trip here. We're coming out of this pandemic and we're ready to go. We are ready to go. Love it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great. And I'm so happy to inspire.
Thank you, Heather. I really appreciate it. And good luck with everything. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.